we officially have a convicted felon as our president. Donald J. Trump was sentenced the other day for his crimes in New York, where he was found guilty on 34 counts. And basically what he was doing was he was trying to cover up his payments to Stormy Daniels to keep her quiet, to keep that away from the public so would not interfere in the upcoming election against Hillary Clinton. So he was found guilty on all 34 counts. Now, of course, most of us who love to see justice, regardless of who it is, would have liked to have seen some sort of jail time. We would have liked seen some sort of punishment. But I think all of us knew that going in, that was not going to happen. It wasn't going to happen because the judge pretty much said it wasn't going to happen. So let's go real quick. And by the way, if you are joining me on TikTok, you can also come on over to YouTube and subscribe and join with me there too as well. I would appreciate that if you did it. If not, just stay on TikTok and watch, and please hit that double tap the screen. And I'm learning all the TikTok stuff, so just bear with me. But let's get to the news here. Trump avoids prison time, fines for New York felony conviction. President-elect Trump, I know the news has to report that, but as we know on this show, the president-elect was Elon Musk. But anyway, President-elect Trump received no penalty sentence in his New York hush money case Friday after the Supreme Court refused to intervene. Trump is the first former and returning president convicted of a felony. The expected sentence of unconditional discharge and recommended by prosecutors means the conviction remains on his legal record. The sentencing, which Trump fought to delay or block altogether, comes just 10 days before his inauguration and White House return. The nation's high court on Thursday dashed a last-ditch bid by Trump's legal team to stop the proceeding. Judge Juan Merchan had already indicated that Trump wouldn't face jail time and after winning the 2024 election. Now, of course, the four dissenting judges, as we all knew was going to be, was Thomas, Alito, Kavanaugh, and Gorsuch. I will say one thing for Amy Coney Barrett. She seems to be taking the job seriously. Now, obviously, there are things that Amy Coney Barrett has done and probably will do in the future that will anger us. But at the same time, she does seem to be taking the job seriously, and she is going to rule in fairness and not everything Donald Trump, like those four other boys who get on their knees and bow down to Donald Trump, much like a lot of the other MAGA men do. It's funny to me when we call these guys men on the MAGA side, because I've never seen men so in love with other men in my entire life. It is a very bizarre thing. Like, I grew up, like I said, I was a huge sports fan, and I grew up, Dan Marino, Larry Bird were two of my biggest heroes growing up as a kid. I'm a child, and as a kid growing up, these were my heroes. I didn't love these two nowhere near as grown men love this guy, Donald Trump, who's a grifter, a lifelong con man, a clown, and he's like literally the dumbest person I've ever heard speak in politics. And that's saying a lot based on what we've seen over the last, 4, 5, 6 years, when you're throwing in a Matt Gaetz and a Lauren Boebert and Marjorie Taylor Greene. The bar is very low, but Donald Trump still somehow finds a way to shimmy under it. But, of course, Donald Trump and his ridiculous, I don't even like doing this, but this was him on his Truth Social. He had to say something about the particular case, that the radical Democrats have lost another pathetic, un-American witch hunt. Now, keep in mind, all of this language is important for their side, because radical, Democrats, un-American, witch hunt, All these things resonate with a certain group of people, and it's enough people to make sure that this guy runs the country again and never serves any time for all the crimes he's committed. This is a calculated, very organized thing. Then this isn't Donald Trump coming. Donald Trump is going to say this kind of crap anyway. He has his entire life. But the organization of the far right propaganda media has put all this together to sucker so many people in this country. But we'll get into stuff like that a little bit later. Let's finish with this moron has to say on American Witch Hunt. After spending I'm not doing a Donald Trump impression, by the way. I know a lot of people try to do it. I tried before, it didn't work out well. After spending tens of millions of dollars, wasting over 6 years of obsessive work that should have been spent on protecting New Yorkers from violent, rampant crime that is destroying the city and the state. Crime is down in New York, by the way. Coordinating with the Biden-Harris Department of Injustice in lawless weaponization and bringing complete, baseless, illegal, and fake charges against your 45th and 47th president, me, I was given an unconditional discharge. That result alone proves that, as all legal scholars and experts have said, that is absolutely not true. There is no case. There was never a case. And this whole scam fully deserves to be dismissed. Too late for that. The real jury, the American people, have spoken by reelecting me with an overwhelming mandate. That is not true. We went over that last show in one of the most consequential elections in history. That I will agree with, and it went the wrong way. As the American people have seen, this case has no crime, no damage, no proof, no facts, no law, only highly conflicted judge, a star witness who is a disbarred, disgraced serial perjurer and criminal election interference. I noticed he left out Stormy Daniels as a star witness in that case. Today's event was a despicable charade. Almost done, I promise. And now that it is over, we will appeal this hoax which has no merit and restore the trust of Americans in our great system of justice, make America great again. So the most disappointing thing about these messages and these tweets is that for 4 years when Biden was president, we were reading this nonsense. And I think a lot of us were convinced, I know I was, I'll speak for me, that this nonsense was going to be over with. We would not have to deal with this anymore. But unfortunately, not only are we going to have to deal with it again, but we have a minimum of 4 years, unless something happens, 4 years of this ridiculousness. And see, the problem, again, it harkens back to the fact that Donald Trump can post this all day long and people read it, and you have a large number of people who read this, like you, me, and anybody else watching this program who sides with the right side, I should say, at least against Donald Trump. Anything is the right side in my estimation. But if you're reading that, you understand how insanely ridiculous it is. But we have seen how well this works on people who are susceptible to this and who are easily duped and manipulated, or they think and they know that he is full of it. However, it just it resonates with them. The fact that Donald Trump trolls the libtards is way more important to them than making sure that egg prices actually do go down, that interest rates and gas prices actually do go down, even though the president doesn't really control interest rates and gas prices. But Donald Trump has them thinking that it does. So when they don't go down, the good news for Donald Trump and the whole MAGA side is that it doesn't matter that none of that stuff goes down, because he's going to conduct his little tweets. And then he's also going to have President Musk with his $44 billion purchase of Twitter. He's going to have the Joe Rogans of the world, the far right-wing propaganda ecosystem that is dominated and is taken over the mainstream media. That's something everybody, keeps talking about, is how the liberals dominate mainstream media. What are you, out of your fucking mind? The media is now dominated by right-wing propaganda. And the mainstream media, they're not 100% on board with the right-wing propaganda media, but they're not helping. They're not helping at all. In fact, you want to know how I know that? Look at the ratings of CNN and MSNBC. They have declined significantly. Significantly, they have declined. And that is because you have a lot of people on the left who were counting on them to tell the truth and to call out Donald Trump and all these lies about everything that's being said on the right. They didn't do it. They might have tried here and there, but they didn't do it properly. They still wanted to both sides things. And when you both sides things, you have one side of media that is 100% on Donald Trump's side. And then you got another side of media that isn't necessarily against Donald Trump. He's not necessarily for him either, but you have 50% of it trying to be fair to him. And when you have that 50% of trying to be fair to him, and then you add in the right-wing propaganda ecosystem and propaganda media, then it's impossible. It's almost impossible to win. But take solace in this. There's one thing everybody should take solace in. And the one thing you should take solace in is that he barely won, despite the fact that he said mandate. He barely won. Look at all the states. Everybody's like, he won all the swing states. Yes, he won all the swing states. That's true. If you look at a team schedule and they played 10 games and they won 7 out of the 10 games, but 7 of those games were just by 2 or 3 points or 1 point, that means they barely won every game. Yeah, they won the 7 games, but it didn't mean they blew out all the teams. Same thing. You look at all the states that were swing states. He barely won all of them, and it was the 3rd lowest popular vote total in the history of this country. So this idea that it was a mandate and a blowout is absurdly ridiculous. That is absolutely not true. But what I was saying was, what we can take solace in is that a woman who you still had a lot of people who didn't know who she was, barely lost with 100 days to run. So if you think all is lost, I wouldn't necessarily blame you, but I would also say that, take solace in this. And then you also got to take solace in the fact that no matter what, the right-wing MAGAs are going to believe everything that propaganda media says. Do you really think that if egg prices don't go down, milk, gas, interest rates, which they're not going to, by the way, when the tariffs actually start raising prices, do you think that, or not think, do you not think that they have already written the script for those easily manipulated people to tell them exactly why it didn't happen and how they can still blame it on Joe Biden? That script's already been written, and that script is going to be put into play as soon as all this comes to fruition. And they're going to go around and regurgitate all of it. However, you're still going to have the people who didn't necessarily love Donald Trump. They just didn't know Kamala Harris was, or if they knew she was, it was based on ridiculous disinformation. So they're like, I guess it's better to vote for this guy over the woman who only cares about making sure that transgender people get surgeries in prison. That makes more sense to me. So those people are going to start to realize, wow, I made a big mistake. And some of those people already have realized that they made a big mistake. I've seen it. I've seen people say, I think I made a mistake. This might not be good. So we'll see how that plays out. One other last thing before I move on to the next segment, I want to point out, and I pointed this out too in a podcast a few weeks ago. It was not too far after the election. And I saw this again, and it's just, it's clear to me. First of all, yes, I understand I'm a white person. However, I'm talking about, there is a statistic that if you took out uneducated white people's vote, Kamala Harris wins in an absolute landslide. You could throw in the evangelicals too. And what's the difference, or what's the similarities really between the evangelicals and the the MAGA people and the uneducated white people? They're all very easily manipulated. They're easily angered. You can anger them over things that are not happening, like immigrants are not invading this country and committing crimes left and right. Boys are not dominating girls' sports. That's not happening. The inflation rate right now is the same inflation rate, or right around the same inflation rate that it was when before Joe Biden took office. The economy is fantastic, but those people think the economy is terrible. I'm not saying that egg prices and milk prices aren't a little bit higher in some places across the country, some places. And I'll tell you one place, my state, Florida, highest inflation rate in the country right now. So if we're looking by state, you guys, if you live in the state of Florida, you might want to talk to your governor about what's going on in the state of Florida, because right now we have the highest inflation rate. You know, also too, the poorest countries, or the poorest states in the country, are mostly red states. If you look at the poorest states in the country, if you see the bottom 10, 9 out of the bottom 10 are red states. If you want to see the richest ones, I think it's 8 out of the top 10 are the richest states in the country. They're blue states. So I don't know. You keep talking about how the blue governors and the blue people, the blue states, how their states are run are so terrible. Meanwhile, this is coming from a fucking moron in West Virginia or Mississippi or Missouri, whose states are disasters.